He disappeared right in the barracks, and no one remembered his name. But I still had Ahmad's soldier's card, and that night I heard him giving orders from underground. Join Uncle Hollow in uncovering this true story, a secret hidden deep in the ground of Singapore, where a war ritual never ends. The armed forces are a symbol of discipline, strength, and order. But sometimes, even in that place of absolute control, there are things no one dares to name. Ahmad's story is more than a supernatural phenomenon. It's a warning that the past is never truly over. The scars of war, even covered by concrete and discipline, can still resurface if disturbed. The larger lesson is, the system may forget you, erase you from its records, but what you leave in the memories of others is not so easily erased. And if something can control a person, make him perform the rituals of the last century, then perhaps Ahmad is not the first, and certainly not the last. Is this the result of burying historical sins, or a sign that they have never left? Most people join the military expecting discipline, camaraderie, maybe a few bruises, not ghost stories, not vanishings. But what happened to Ahmad? That still haunts me. It was supposed to be a normal 2-year national service, mandatory for all young men here. We were thrown into the same training camp deep in the jungle, stripped of phones, names, and sleep. The perfect place to be remade into soldiers, or broken down. Ahmad was different from the start. Loud, defiant, always pushing back against the rules. While most of us stayed quiet, trying to survive those brutal first weeks, he picked fights with officers, skipped drills, and laughed in the face of punishment. Until they sent him into isolation, to an old training block no longer used. They said it was just a holding cell, just cement and iron and peeling paint. But the whispers started on the first night. I was on guard duty when I saw it. Ahmad standing shirtless in the courtyard at 3 a.m., staring into nothing, his lips moving as if he were answering someone. But there was no one else there. The air around him felt heavier, charged. The next morning, Ahmad looked like a different person, pale, shaking, eyes sunken like he hadn't slept for days. That's when things began to unravel. Before we go any further, comment where in the world you're watching from and make sure to subscribe. Tomorrow's story will take us even deeper into the unknown. Back then, I told myself it was stress, sleep deprivation, just a young man cracking under pressure. But after what happened next, I stopped pretending. Because there's one thing the military can't train you for: when something starts watching you back. They say every camp has its ghost story, old tales passed from one batch of recruits to the next. But ours didn't come from the past. It started with Ahmad. The night after he was moved into the isolation block, the atmosphere in camp shifted. That building had been shut for years. We knew it from orientation: cracked floors, rusted pipes, blackout curtains nailed to the windows. They used it once during World War II, then never touched it again. Officially, it was a storage area. Unofficially, everyone avoided it, even officers. But rules were rules, and Ahmad had broken too many. So they locked him in. No phone, no light, just one bunk and a bucket. At midnight, I drew perimeter duty near that block. The jungle buzzed behind me. Night birds, cicadas, rustling trees. Everything sounded normal, until it didn't. The buzzing stopped. In the distance, a light flickered behind the curtains of the isolation block. Just one window, stuttering like a dying bulb. Then came the sound, low, rhythmic murmuring, like a prayer, but not in any language I knew. I called out to the guard beside me, "Do you hear that?" He shook his head, confused. Then movement. The curtain pulled back slightly, just enough for me to see Ahmad standing inside, shirtless, his arms by his sides, his head tilted unnaturally to the left, almost touching his shoulder. He wasn't looking at me. His eyes were locked on something lower, something out of frame. His lips were moving. At first, I thought he was muttering to himself, but then he paused, tilted his head the other way, nodded. He was listening. I radioed the supervisor, told them Ahmad might be having a breakdown. Maybe he needed a medic. But they didn't act, said it was just fatigue. The next morning, Ahmad didn't report for morning formation. When they brought him out of the block, he looked hollow, like something had been sucked out of him. He didn't speak, just walked in silence. When the sergeant asked if he was okay, Ahmad finally said something, one sentence. His voice was flat, empty. They were talking all night. We all thought he meant the guards, or maybe he'd lost sleep over jungle noises. But when the camp medic examined him, she found no fever, no infection, just elevated heart rate, mild dehydration. Ahmad refused food, water, even eye contact. He just sat on his bed, staring at the floor. I tried to talk to him. We weren't close, but in the army, silence is worse than shouting. I said his name. He didn't look up. But he whispered something, so quiet I had to lean in. At first I thought it was Malay, then maybe Tamil, but the cadence was wrong, old, measured, like someone reciting from memory. "What did you say?" I asked. He blinked slowly, turned his head toward me, and whispered again, "They're down there." I didn't ask what he meant. That night, no one slept well, not because of Ahmad, but because of the heat. The power had gone out across 3 blocks, not due to a storm or overuse. The engineers couldn't explain it. Just before dawn, the lights came back. Everything returned to normal, except Ahmad. He stayed in his bed, unmoving, eyes wide open, watching the ceiling like it might fall on him. And maybe it already had. By the 3rd night, something was undeniably wrong with Ahmad. He hadn't spoken to anyone since the morning he said, "They're down there." He didn't eat, barely drank. His skin took on a waxy gray tone. The medic said it was psychological, a response to isolation, but we all knew better. Because we'd started hearing things too. At first, it was just creaks, the kind you expect from old buildings. Then came footsteps, pacing, measured, heavy boots dragging slowly across concrete when no one was there. One recruit from Delta Company swore he saw someone walking in Ahmad's isolation block at 2 a.m., even though it was locked and monitored. When the officers checked the security camera feed, the screen just glitched, static, from exactly 2:12 to 2:16 a.m. 4 minutes lost, no explanation. That same night, a guard doing his rounds passed by the block and noticed something odd. The curtain had been pulled open slightly, just enough to see inside. He said Ahmad wasn't in his bed. He was on the floor, on all fours, facing the corner of the room, unmoving, as if listening. When the officers entered to check, they found him in bed, exactly where he should be, lights on, eyes shut. Nothing unusual until they rolled him over. Both his hands were scraped raw, dirt caked under his fingernails, as if he'd been digging. The floor was solid concrete. I saw him the next morning, not in formation, but sitting alone under the tree near the back fence, staring at the soil. When I asked what he was doing, he didn't look at me. He just whispered, It's not just voices now. They're showing me things. I asked him what kind of things. He finally turned. His eyes were bloodshot, unblinking. A room below the room, stairs where there shouldn't be stairs, and soldiers still marching. There was no way any of that made sense. That building had no basement. We'd been told that since day one. Yet something about the way he said it with such certainty made my stomach twist. That afternoon, Ahmad refused medical attention again. The sergeant lost patience and tried dragging him up. That's when something strange happened. Ahmad resisted, but not with force, with fear, like a child being pulled toward fire. And when the sergeant grabbed his arm, Ahmad screamed, not in pain, in another language. The sergeant let go instantly. I was right there. I heard it. The words weren't Malay. They weren't Chinese. They were sharp, guttural, ancient. Later, one of the older officers, a man who had studied military history, said it sounded like Japanese, old Japanese, the kind used in wartime chants. No one believed him, not officially. But no one volunteered to be near Ahmad after that either. That night, we heard banging from the isolation block again. Not fists, but something heavier, like boots. And underneath that, voices, multiple, not shouting, chanting. By the end of the week, fear had spread like mold. No one talked to Ahmad anymore, not out of cruelty, but because no one knew how. He was no longer part of the unit. He barely seemed human. He spoke only in whispers now, rarely blinked, ate nothing, slept with his eyes open, and each night someone heard something new. Scratching, pacing, the low hum of voices behind the walls. But nothing prepared us for what happened that Thursday. It started just after 3 a.m. I was in my bunk when the alarm sounded, but it wasn't the usual alert. It was a manual pull from the outer compound, a distress signal. Our platoon sergeant stormed in, ordered everyone out in formation. We stumbled out half-dressed, confused, bleary-eyed. Then we saw him. Ahmad was in the middle of the courtyard, alone, barefoot, in full uniform, though he hadn't been issued one since being isolated. He stood perfectly still, chin up, arms locked at his sides. And then, without warning, he marched. Precise, mechanical, the old-style drill steps we'd seen in grainy black and white footage from the World War II archives. Not modern SAF training, something older, sharper. And then he shouted. Words none of us understood. 3 syllables, repeated over and over. An officer yelled for him to stop. Another tried to approach. Ahmad turned sharply, snapped into a salute. His hand moved in a slow, unnatural arc, not like ours, not like any modern soldier, like a ritual. That's when the lights around the compound began to flicker. Every floodlight stuttered in sync. Shadows rippled along the walls. For a split second, I saw them. Outlines behind Ahmad. Dozens, rows, all standing at attention. But when I blinked, they were gone. Ahmad collapsed. When medics rushed to him, they found his hands trembling, lips moving, but his voice was gone, like his vocal cords had given out. We were ordered back to bed. Stress hallucinations, they said, sleep deprivation. But none of us slept. The next day, we held a quiet briefing, off the record. The officers didn't want it logged, just to get a handle on the rumors. That's when Staff Sergeant Lim spoke. He was the oldest among us, had served for over 20 years. Calm, rational, not a man prone to superstition. He cleared his throat and said, "I saw a boy do the same thing 15 years ago. Different name, Different face, same drill, same scream. Silence. No one asked questions after that. That night, I stayed awake. From my bunk, I could see the isolation block. No lights, no sound. But at exactly 3 a.m., something changed. The wind stopped, and from the distance, I heard it. Boots, pounding in rhythm. Not one set, dozens. We all assumed that after the marching incident, Ahmad would be transferred, medically discharged, sedated, anything. But the command didn't act. Maybe they didn't want attention. Maybe they were afraid. They simply reinforced the isolation block, added an external lock, restricted access, rotated guards every 2 hours. Ahmad was now under 24/7 surveillance. Except that didn't stop what came next. 2 nights later, the front gate alarm triggered at 2:43 a.m. That gate was over 300 meters from the isolation block, locked with biometric access, monitored by 3 cameras. No recruit was allowed near it unsupervised. But when the guards arrived, they found Ahmad standing outside it, alone, in silence. He was barefoot again. His uniform was gone, replaced by a loose, sleeveless top soaked in dirt. His arms were covered in deep scratches, deliberate, parallel, like they had meaning. The guard aimed his rifle, unsure of protocol. Ahmad didn't move. He didn't blink. He just whispered, "I can't go back down there." When backup arrived, they physically restrained him, though it took 4 men. Not because he fought back, because every time someone touched him, they hesitated, said he felt cold. Not just temperature-wise, empty, like he'd been drained. They returned him to the isolation block. But this time, one of the guards followed protocol and checked the surveillance system. Ahmad never left. The footage showed his body lying in bed the whole time. No movement, no gaps in footage, no tampering. But 5 witnesses swore they escorted him from the gate. The footage was brought to the commanding officer. It was marked "Unexplainable Incident. Personnel monitoring required." That day, I tried again to speak to Ahmad. I wasn't sure why. Maybe guilt. Maybe I needed to know if there was still a person inside. I approached the isolation block after training. The guards let me in for 5 minutes. He sat in the corner of the room, head tilted, staring at the ground, no eye contact. I asked what he saw out there, at the gate. His answer came slowly, like pulling words from stone. I thought I could leave, but the voices followed. They said, "They're not done with me yet." He looked up for the first time. There was blood in his eyes. Not metaphorically, actual red lines spreading like branches, pulsing with each heartbeat. "They want something," he said. "I was supposed to give it to them, but I didn't know what it was." I asked him who they were. He didn't answer. He just pressed his hand against the concrete floor. "It's not solid," he whispered. "Not when they call." That night, one of the guards assigned to his watch requested a transfer. Said he heard Ahmad reciting numbers in perfect Japanese, repeatedly, in 3s, over and over, like coordinates. The next morning, the scratches on Ahmad's arms had changed shape. Not random anymore. They looked like symbols, like writing. And it wasn't the first time someone had seen them. A retired sergeant who'd returned for inspection looked pale when he saw the photos. He muttered a single word: "Repeat." We started to wonder if Ahmad was just a victim or a message. The barracks had always felt heavy, like the air didn't move right. At first, we blamed the humidity, the concrete, the age of the buildings. But after what happened with Ahmad, we started to question what was buried beneath our boots. Literally. It was Private Co who found it. He was part of the maintenance crew sent to repair a water pipe burst under the floor of the unused eastern wing, the same one Ahmad had been isolated in. The water had been leaking for days, but no one prioritized it until the smell started. When Ko and his team pulled up the cracked floor tiles, they uncovered something unexpected. A flat slab of stone, blackened with time, carved with unfamiliar symbols. Burn marks surrounded its edges, and in the center, a shallow, bowl-like depression filled with dust, ashes, and something else. Bone fragments. Old, brittle, burnt. The crew stopped work immediately. They called the supervising officer, who brought in a historian from the Ministry of Defense's Heritage Unit, quietly, without informing the media or even most of command. The verdict? A wartime ritual site. The stone was believed to be a shokanhi, a soul-summoning altar used by Japanese soldiers during World War II to honor their dead and, sometimes, to contain the spirits of those they had executed. This wasn't just folklore. During the occupation, some Japanese units believed in binding rituals, trapping hostile spirits beneath shrines, silencing them with offerings, commands, and blood. These altars weren't meant for prayer. They were cages, and someone had built one beneath our barracks. The historian's assistant made an offhand comment. If that seal broke, whatever was inside might not be happy. The officer brushed it off, ordered the area sealed, marked it as heritage sensitive. No more work to be done there. But the damage had already been done. That very night, Ahmad began scratching the word home into the walls of his room, over and over. Not in English, not in Malay, in Japanese. He shouldn't have known how. The medics sedated him, but the scratches kept appearing, sometimes while he was restrained, always in the same pattern, as if something else was guiding his hand. One of the guards stationed near him quit mid-shift, said he saw Ahmad levitating, just 2 inches off the ground, just for a second, but long enough. The room grew colder too. One evening, the temperature in his cell dropped to 12 degrees Celsius, in Singapore, with no air conditioning. Infrared cameras showed heat signatures that didn't belong, multiple figures, standing still, around the bed. And yet, Ahmad didn't scream. Not anymore. He just whispered. They buried it, but it woke up. The officers tried to rationalize everything, but the whispers spread. Recruits from other blocks started reporting dreams, all the same, marching, chanting, a staircase beneath the earth, and a boy with no face standing at the bottom, holding a blade. When I had the dream, I stopped doubting. That week, I requested a reassignment. It was denied. I asked to visit the sealed floor again, to see the shrine. Permission was granted, under escort. The room was dark, silent, but I swear I heard something. Not a voice, a breath, like the building was exhaling, waiting. And in that moment, I knew something terrible. Ahmad wasn't the origin. He was the conduit. Nobody called it possession at first. That word didn't exist in a military report. They preferred terms like deteriorating condition, disassociation, or psychological breakdown. But what happened next, no officer could rationalize. On Tuesday, the medics tried a stronger sedative, enough to keep any recruit unconscious for hours. They tied restraints to Ahmad's wrists and ankles and left him under camera surveillance. 20 minutes later, we heard the screams. Not Ahmad's voice, multiple voices, layered, overlapping, deep, sharp, high, guttural, each one distinct. It sounded like a crowd trapped inside a single throat. By the time the guards reached the room, the walls were shaking. They ordered Ahmad to stop. He didn't even look their way. His eyes rolled back, only the whites showing. His mouth hung open wider than seemed physically possible. Then everything fell silent. Ahmad dropped to the floor. The lights flickered and the cameras went black. When the backup generator kicked in, the room was a disaster. Furniture overturned, blood sprayed in thin arcs across the walls. But Ahmad was still tied down. The restraints hadn't broken. So who caused the damage? The medic nearest the scene later testified, "I felt like I was in the presence of someone older, not Ahmad, something using him." As the guards tried to lift him onto the stretcher, he convulsed violently, not like seizures, but like being pulled upward by invisible strings. His back arched so high, his spine looked ready to snap. Then came the whisper, soft, right behind my ear, "Stand down." The sergeant barked at everyone to move back. The room stank of mold, metal, and something else, like old gunpowder. The air pressed in on us, thick and unnatural. Ahmad's body finally relaxed, but when they rolled him onto his side, we saw his arms. Symbols, dozens of them, carved deep, fresh blood still rising. The historian was rushed in again. One look and he staggered back. "Those are Imperial command markings," he said, "specific to wartime units tasked with executions." Command refused to believe it. They ordered a psychiatric transfer, emergency transport planned for next morning. But the night wasn't over. Around 2 a.m., power failed in the entire block. All lights, all monitors, all communications. Absolute silence swallowed the camp. A lone emergency flashlight flickered in the hallway, and from down the corridor, we heard boots. Marching. Closer, closer, closer. Not chaotic, not in panic, in formation. The guards chambered their rifles. They called out warnings. No response. Then pounding on doors. Dozens of fists, or boots, or both, slamming in perfect rhythm. One by one, recruits woke screaming. Some swore they saw faces staring through window slats, pale eyes, wide mouths, uniforms from another era. I froze on my bunk, heart racing, unable to breathe. And then I heard the voice again. "He's almost home." Just like that, the lights snapped back on. Every door was untouched. Every recruit accounted for. Every alarm silent. But Ahmad's door was wide open. Restraints lay on the floor, still tied in perfect knots. And Ahmad stood in the hallway, staring up at the ceiling, arms raised like he was saluting something no one else could see. For the first time, he smiled. Not like a human, like a puppet that finally learned who pulled its strings. By now, even the officers had stopped pretending. Ahmad wasn't just unwell. He was part of something none of us understood. And whatever it was getting stronger. The psychiatric transfer was canceled. No explanation given. Ahmad remained in isolation, though the locks no longer mattered. Every night, we found his door wide open by dawn. Every morning, he was exactly where we left him, asleep, staring at the ceiling, or whispering to someone who wasn't there. But on Friday night, that changed. I was on final perimeter duty, just past 2:30 a.m. The jungle was still. No wind, no insects. Even the frogs had gone silent. Then I saw movement. A figure marching through the fog near the south fence, uniformed, precise, but off. It was Ahmad, except his gait was stiff, too perfect, arms swinging in unnatural arcs, head locked forward, eyes wide open, glowing faintly in the moonlight. Behind him, shadows, dozens of them, all in formation, all marching in sync. I radioed it in, no response. I ran toward the eastern wing where his room was supposed to be sealed, just to make sure. And that's when I saw it. Ahmad was still there, sleeping peacefully. So who or what had I seen? I called the control room, asked them to check the cameras. At 3 a.m. sharp, every feed glitched, static across all screens. Power surge logged, just like 2 weeks before. When the system rebooted 5 minutes later, Ahmad's room was empty. No broken locks, no forced exit, just gone. His restraints lay folded on the bed. His uniform hung neatly on the wall. No sign of a struggle, no blood, no trail. But something else was left behind. On the floor, directly beneath his bunk, etched into the cement, was a perfect circle. Inside it, more symbols, same style as before, but this time they glowed faintly. Heat sensors placed over the circle returned anomalous readings, 7 degrees Celsius below ambient, as if the floor was absorbing warmth. The military sent in a forensic unit, quietly, no records filed. They marked it as equipment malfunction, but the building was closed indefinitely. They told us nothing, but we heard the whispers. They said a name had disappeared from the system. Not just Ahmad's current file, his entire enlistment record, wiped. No intake photo, no medical file, no training log. Even the batch photo from our first day was gone. Except I still had a copy, printed, hidden in my journal. I pulled it out that night and looked closely. We'd taken the photo in front of the camp's flagpole. 42 recruits. I counted. One row had only 9, supposed to be 10. There was a gap, like someone had been cropped out, cleanly, too clean. I stared at the space, and that's when I saw it. A faint outline, not quite a shadow, but the suggestion of a person. Face blurred, hands by his side, standing at attention. Even in absence, he was still there. 2 weeks after Ahmad disappeared, I was discharged from active duty. Medical exemption, they called it. Sleeplessness, elevated heart rate, night terrors. But I knew the real reason. I'd seen too much. And more importantly, I remembered. They tried to erase it. The files, the photos, the witnesses, reassigned or silenced. But memory doesn't work like data. Some things stay. I kept the journal, the photo with the missing figure, and one more thing. Ahmad's dog tag. I found it tucked into my locker the day I left. No note, no explanation, just his name, barely etched, half rusted over. But it was real. I brought it to the administrative office, asked for his file. They found nothing. No record of Ahmad serving. No enlistment ID. No training records. Nothing, like he'd never existed. I pushed harder, showed them the dog tag. The officer looked at it, then back at me, and simply said, "You shouldn't have this." Then he took it and told me to leave. That night, I dreamt of the barracks again, the shrine beneath the floor, the glowing circle, and Ahmad standing in the center. This time, he turned to face me. Not angry, not pleading, just waiting. I woke up drenched in sweat, heart pounding. I still don't know what he became. A vessel? A warning? A sacrifice? But I know this much. He wasn't the first. And if that shrine is still sealed under concrete, he won't be the last. If you remember Ahmad, comment below. What do you think really happened to him? And if you ever heard footsteps at 3 a.m., you're not alone. Don't forget to like if you find this story chilling. Comment your guess. What is the entity? Was Ahmad chosen or the one who woke them up? Subscribe to never miss another mystery story.